Sarah Harris used to believe her life was the very picture of the American dream. She and her husband, John, had been married for 12 years. They owned a charming two-story home in the suburbs of Chicago, white shutters, a swing in the backyard for their 8-year-old son, Noah, and a neatly trimmed lawn that their neighbors always admired. John worked as a financial consultant for a respected firm downtown. Sarah, a marketing manager, had flexibility in her schedule, which meant she could balance both career and motherhood. On Sundays, they went to church together. During the week, they traded off dropping Noah at soccer practice. Friends often said, "You two are the couple everyone wants to be." Sarah would smile, nodding politely, but deep down, she wondered if appearances could really tell the whole story. At first, she dismissed those thoughts. After all, John was a provider. He was stable, reliable, and rarely lost his temper. He made sure bills were paid, the house stayed in good condition, and their son felt loved. But in private, Sarah couldn't ignore the growing emptiness. She remembered a time when John used to send her little text messages in the middle of the day, "Thinking of you," or "Can't wait to see you tonight." But those had stopped years ago. Now, if she texted him during work hours, she would get a curt reply like, "Busy. Talk later." Sometimes, no reply at all. Still, Sarah told herself this was just what marriage looked like after a decade. The passion naturally fades, right? That's what her friends said when they complained about their own husbands. But something about John's change felt different. It wasn't just the lack of intimacy. It was the distance in his eyes when she tried to talk about her day. It was the way his body stiffened when she leaned against him on the couch. Then came the first sign. It was a Tuesday night in late October. Sarah was folding laundry in their bedroom when she slipped her hand into the pocket of John's suit jacket, preparing it for dry cleaning. Her fingers brushed against a folded piece of paper. Curious, she pulled it out. It was a receipt, an expensive dinner at a high-end steakhouse downtown. The date made her pause. That same night, John had claimed he was working late at the office. Sarah frowned, her heart racing. She tried to rationalize. Maybe it was a client dinner. Maybe he had forgotten to mention it. But the nagging thought refused to leave her mind. John wasn't careless with details. He always told her about client meetings. Why hide this one? That night, when John came home past 11 p.m., Sarah asked casually, "Long day at the office?" He nodded, loosening his tie, avoiding her gaze. "Yeah, brutal. Just glad to be home." Sarah wanted to confront him with the receipt right then, but she hesitated. What if she was wrong? What if she sounded paranoid? Instead, she stuffed the slip of paper into her nightstand drawer, letting it sit there like a silent witness. The weeks that followed only deepened her unease. John started showering as soon as he came home, a habit he never had before. He guarded his phone like a hawk, taking it with him even to the bathroom. His laughter on late-night calls drifted through the closed office door. When Sarah knocked once, he snapped, "I'm busy, Sarah. Can't this wait?" She swallowed her hurt and stepped back, telling herself she was imagining things. But her gut screamed otherwise. Then, one weekend, John invited her to a company picnic, a casual event where families mingled with employees. That's when Sarah met Vanessa Miller. Vanessa was striking, mid-30s, polished, with a laugh that rang like crystal. She worked in John's department, introduced as one of the firm's rising stars. When Sarah shook her hand, she noticed John standing a little too close to her, his smile too easy, too warm. Later, during a group conversation, Sarah caught John watching Vanessa when he thought no one was looking. The sight made her stomach twist. That night, Sarah lay awake staring at the ceiling. She hated herself for thinking it, but she knew. She knew this woman was the missing piece in John's sudden distance. She didn't want to believe it. She didn't want to destroy her marriage over suspicion. But she couldn't shake the image of the receipt in her drawer, Vanessa's glittering laugh, and John's eyes following her. Their perfect marriage wasn't perfect at all. It was a stage, and Sarah was beginning to see the cracks in the set. What she didn't realize then was that the receipt was only the beginning, just the first breadcrumb on a path leading her to a betrayal so deep it would threaten not just her marriage, but her entire sense of self. Sarah tried to shake off her unease after the company picnic, but the image of John and Vanessa lingered like a shadow. She told herself she was being dramatic, jealous, even. After all, John had never given her a reason not to trust him before. But that was the lie she repeated in her head. In her heart, she knew something had shifted. The following week, Sarah decided to test him. One evening, when John came home unusually late, she greeted him with a smile. "Hey, I made lasagna tonight. Thought you'd be starving after work." John hesitated before answering, dropping his briefcase by the door. "I already grabbed something with a client. Sorry. Didn't want to bother you." Sarah studied his face, trying to find traces of guilt, but his expression was carefully neutral. "Which client?" she asked casually. His eyes flickered, just for a second. "Oh, just a new investor. You wouldn't know him." Her stomach nodded. She knew John well enough to spot that flicker. He was lying. That night, when he finally fell asleep, Sarah slipped into the living room and opened his laptop. She knew his password, it hadn't changed in years. She hesitated, guilt gnawing at her, but then pushed through. If there was nothing to find, she could rest easy. Her breath caught when she saw the browser history. Most of it was wiped clean, but a few traces remained: searches for luxury boutique hotels, dinner reservations at places she'd never been, and one email draft unsent. "Can't wait until the weekend." Counting down the hours. Sarah's hands trembled as she closed the laptop. She didn't need a signature to know who those messages were meant for. The next morning, she tried to act normal, making coffee and packing Noah's lunch. But when John walked into the kitchen, freshly showered and humming to himself, something inside her snapped. "You seem happy," she said, forcing the words out. John glanced at her, puzzled. "Is that a bad thing?" "Depends," she said, her tone sharper than she intended. "Are you happy with me, John? Or with someone else?" He froze, the mug halfway to his lips. For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then he set the cup down slowly. "Where is this coming from, Sarah?" Her eyes burned, but she refused to look away. "You're distant. You're always working late. You guard your phone like it's made of gold. And last weekend, the way you looked at Vanessa, don't tell me I imagined that." John's jaw tightened. "Vanessa is just a colleague. You're overreacting." "Am I?" Sarah whispered. John stood there, silent, his expression unreadable. Instead of reassuring her, he grabbed his coat. "I don't have time for this right now. We'll talk later." But later never came. Over the next few days, John doubled down on his secrecy. He stopped leaving his laptop unattended, changed the password on his phone, and became more irritable whenever Sarah tried to ask questions. Their once light-hearted evenings turned into a cold war of silence, Noah caught in the crossfire of tension he didn't understand. Sarah felt trapped between two impossible choices: confront him directly and risk blowing everything apart, or keep pretending until the truth consumed her. She hated herself for snooping, for doubting, but the alternative, living blind, was worse. Her breaking point came one Friday afternoon. Sarah had left work early to surprise John with his favorite takeout, Thai curry and spring rolls. She parked her car outside his office building, imagining his face lighting up when he saw her. But as she waited in the lot, her heart nearly stopped. John walked out of the building, laughing. Beside him was Vanessa. She was dressed casually, her hair loose, and John carried her gym bag like it was the most natural thing in the world. They weren't touching, but the closeness between them was undeniable. The way his eyes softened when he looked at her, the way she tilted her head toward him, smiling, it was intimacy Sarah hadn't seen in years. She sat frozen behind the wheel, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. The takeout bag slid onto the floor. John opened Vanessa's car door for her, his hand brushing her arm as she slipped inside. Then he leaned down, close enough that Sarah's chest clenched with rage, waiting for the kiss. But instead, he straightened, gave her a quick smile, and shut the door. They drove off together. Sarah couldn't breathe. The truth was no longer a shadow or a suspicion, it was alive, playing out in broad daylight. That night, when John returned home hours later, Sarah didn't say a word. She watched him from across the dinner table, her mind replaying the scene in the parking lot. She wanted to scream, to demand the truth, but the words lodged in her throat. Instead, she thought, not yet. Not like this. If John wanted to hide his betrayal, she would make sure there was nowhere left for him to run. And so, with trembling hands, Sarah began to plan. Sarah couldn't sleep that night. She lay awake beside John, listening to his steady breathing, wondering how he could rest so easily while her world was unraveling. Each rise and fall of his chest felt like mockery. He was living two lives, and she was trapped in the one he no longer cared about. At 2 a.m., when she was sure he was in deep sleep, Sarah slipped out of bed and padded quietly into the living room. She turned on a single lamp, the soft glow barely cutting through the darkness. Her heart pounded as she pulled John's briefcase onto her lap. The lock was simple, a combination code she had seen him punch in countless times. After 3 tries, the latch clicked open. She exhaled sharply, half relieved, half terrified. Inside were the usual files and business notes, but tucked between them was something that made her blood run cold, a small velvet jewelry box. Her hands shook as she opened it. A necklace. Simple, elegant, a silver chain with a delicate heart-shaped pendant. It wasn't hers. John hadn't given her jewelry in years. Her stomach churned. There was no way to pretend this was for her. Her birthday was months away, their anniversary long past. And even if it was, John wouldn't hide it like a criminal hiding stolen goods. Sarah snapped the box shut and shoved it back, her mind spiraling. The next morning, John acted as if nothing was wrong. He kissed her cheek before leaving for work, whistling under his breath, and Sarah stood frozen in the doorway watching him drive away. Every move he made, every smile, felt rehearsed now. By midday, she couldn't take it anymore. She called her friend, Megan, the only person she trusted with this. When Megan arrived, Sarah led her into the kitchen and showed her the necklace. "Oh my God," Megan whispered, her eyes widening. "That's not yours?" Sarah shook her head. "I haven't seen anything like it. And John, he's been different. Distant. I saw him with Vanessa. He carried her gym bag, Megan. He looked at her like," Sarah's voice cracked. "Like he used to look at me." Megan placed a hand on her arm. "You need to be sure before you confront him. Men like John, they'll twist things around. Make you feel crazy. Get proof, Sarah. Solid proof." The word proof echoed in Sarah's head long after Megan left. That evening, she borrowed Noah's baby monitor, the one with a motion sensor and recording function. She felt guilty, sick even, but she planted it in the corner of the living room, hidden among the books on the shelf. If John was bringing Vanessa here, Sarah needed to know. The first 2 nights yielded nothing but hours of silence. Sarah almost convinced herself she was being paranoid, until the 3rd night. John had told her he was staying late at the office for a client dinner. Sarah pretended to believe him, kissed his cheek, and tucked Noah into bed. Then she sat in her room, staring at the clock, waiting. At 11:37 p.m., her phone buzzed. The baby monitor app had detected movement. Sarah's hands shook as she opened the feed. There was John. Walking into the living room. Not alone. Vanessa followed, her laugh soft, familiar, and far too comfortable in Sarah's home. She sat on the couch, crossing her legs, while John poured 2 glasses of wine. The way he leaned toward her, the way she touched his arm, it was all there, undeniable. Sarah wanted to scream. She wanted to burst into the room, drag them both out by their throats. But she stayed frozen, watching every second, her nails digging crescents into her palms. And then she saw it, the necklace. John pulled the velvet box from his briefcase, opened it, and draped the silver chain around Vanessa's neck. She laughed, touching the pendant with glowing eyes, then kissed his cheek. Sarah's vision blurred. Her whole body trembled. She couldn't look away. This wasn't suspicion anymore. It wasn't imagination. It was betrayal, raw and naked, in her own living room. When the video ended, Sarah sat in silence, her breath ragged. She replayed the footage again, and again, as if torturing herself with every detail would somehow make it easier. But it didn't. Each laugh, each touch, each smile carved into her like a blade. At 2 a.m., John slipped into bed beside her, smelling faintly of cologne and wine. Sarah kept her eyes closed, her body rigid. She almost laughed at the audacity of him, lying down next to her after giving his heart to someone else. The next morning, Sarah felt hollow. She moved through the motions, making breakfast, packing lunches, kissing Noah on the forehead before school. But inside, something had changed. She wasn't just a betrayed wife anymore. She was a woman with evidence. And that evidence gave her power. Sarah knew she couldn't confront John yet. He'd deny it, spin it, maybe even blame her. But now she had leverage. Now she could play the game. When John returned home that evening, smiling as if he hadn't shattered their marriage the night before, Sarah greeted him with a calmness that startled even herself. "Welcome home," she said, her voice smooth, controlled. John kissed her forehead, oblivious. "Thanks, honey. Long day." Sarah forced a smile, hiding the storm beneath. Long day, indeed, she thought. But yours is about to get a lot longer. Sarah woke the next morning with a strange new energy coursing through her veins. The ache of betrayal was still there, raw and jagged, but something else had taken root alongside it. Resolve. If John thought he could dismantle her life in secret, she would make him believe she was none the wiser. For now. She dressed carefully, choosing a soft blue blouse John had once said made her eyes glow. She applied a little more makeup than usual, smoothed her hair until it gleamed. When she walked into the kitchen to find John sipping coffee, his brows rose in faint surprise. "Well, don't you look nice," he said, that familiar charming smile playing on his lips. Sarah smiled back. "Just felt like making an effort today." Her voice was warm, light. But inside, her thoughts were sharp as knives. "Smile while you can, John. Every grin, every casual lie, is another nail in your coffin." The charade continued throughout the day. She texted him at lunch, sweet little messages she hadn't sent in months. That evening, she made his favorite dinner, roast chicken with rosemary potatoes. Noah laughed at the table, his innocent chatter filling the room, and Sarah caught John glancing at her like he was winning again, like the cracks in their marriage had magically healed. He had no idea she was already building the battlefield where he would lose everything. Later that night, after Noah was asleep and John snored softly beside her, Sarah slipped out of bed. She padded into her office and opened the hidden folder on her laptop where she'd saved the video from the baby monitor. Her hands trembled as she hit play, but this time, the sight of John clasping that necklace around Vanessa's neck didn't destroy her. It fueled her. She transferred the footage to a secure drive, backing it up twice. Then she created a new file, evidence. Into it went screenshots of John's bank statements, withdrawals she hadn't authorized, late-night charges at hotels, and Uber rides that didn't match his supposed work schedule. Each file was a weapon. Each detail, a bullet. By the time the clock struck 3 a.m., she had a small arsenal. She leaned back in her chair, exhaustion pressing heavy on her bones, but a cold satisfaction settling in her chest. For the first time in weeks, she felt in control. The next few days were an exercise in theater. She laughed at John's jokes, touched his arm in passing, even kissed him goodnight. She played the role of the devoted wife so convincingly that even Megan raised an eyebrow when Sarah told her about it over coffee. "You're seriously acting like everything's fine?" Megan asked, her voice low, eyes wide. Sarah sipped her latte calmly. "For now. If I explode too soon, he wins. He'll spin it. Make me look hysterical. But if I wait," her lips curved into a smile that wasn't really a smile, "I'll have everything I need to bury him." Megan exhaled slowly, leaning back. "Sarah, you're scaring me. But I kind of love it." At home, John was smug. He moved with ease again, laughing, whistling, even humming in the shower. Sarah noted it all, memorized it, the arrogance of a man who believed he was untouchable. Then came Friday night. John claimed he had another late meeting. Sarah kissed his cheek, wished him luck, and waved from the door as he drove away. Then she went to her office, opened her laptop, and tracked the GPS she'd quietly installed in his car 2 days earlier. The little blinking dot on the screen told the truth: he wasn't heading to his office. He wasn't even in the same part of town. He was at a boutique hotel downtown. Room 512. Sarah stared at the screen, her chest tightening. Her first instinct was to drive there, to pound on the door until he opened it, but she forced herself still. Instead, she opened her phone, logged into the account she'd created, and scheduled a private investigator. If John wanted to play games, fine. But she would be the one writing the final rules. Hours later, long after John returned smelling faintly of wine and perfume, Sarah lay beside him, silent in the dark. Her pulse pounded in her ears, but she kept her breathing steady, her face calm. John draped an arm across her waist, sighing in contentment. Sarah stared at the ceiling, her lips curling into the faintest smile. "Sleep well, darling," she thought. "Your world is about to collapse, and you won't even see it coming." The following Monday, Sarah sat in her office pretending to answer emails while her mind was fixed on one thing: the folder she'd received from the private investigator. The envelope had arrived early that morning, slid discreetly through her front door. Inside were glossy photos, time-stamped and labeled with clinical precision. She hadn't dared open it while John and Noah were home. Instead, she tucked it under a stack of work documents until the house was quiet. Now, with her office door locked, she peeled it open. Her breath caught as the first image slid free. John. Standing outside the downtown boutique hotel, room 512 glowing faintly behind him. His hand was entwined with Vanessa's, his mouth angled toward hers. The next photo caught the kiss, full, unashamed, as if their marriage vows were dust in the wind. Sarah's stomach clenched, but this time there were no tears. Only a cold, focused fury. She flipped through the rest. More shots, John holding Vanessa close at a restaurant. His hand resting on the small of her back as they crossed a street. Vanessa wearing the necklace Sarah had once seen sparkling in their bedroom drawer. It was undeniable. Undeniable and damning. The PI's report was clipped to the back. A neat summary of dates, times, locations. John's lies laid bare on crisp white paper. Sarah leaned back in her chair, pressing the folder against her chest for a moment. This was it. The proof. Not just suspicion, not just a video from a baby monitor that could be dismissed as misinterpreted. This was irrefutable. She felt something inside her shift. For weeks, she had been a victim, crushed under the weight of betrayal. But now she had power. When John came home that evening, she greeted him at the door with a smile so warm it startled him. "Hey, you're in a good mood," he said, dropping his briefcase and kissing her cheek. Sarah kissed him back. Just happy to see you. John's eyes narrowed slightly, maybe suspicion, maybe guilt. But she didn't let him linger on it. She pulled him toward the kitchen where Noah was already seated, homework spread across the table. Dinner was on the stove, the house smelled of roasted garlic and bread, and everything looked impossibly normal. John relaxed. He slipped into his seat, chatting about his long meeting, while Sarah listened, nodding, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Every lie he told was another thread tightening in the net she was weaving around him. After Noah went to bed, John turned on the TV. Sarah curled up beside him, resting her head on his shoulder. He seemed startled by her sudden affection but welcomed it. She could feel his chest rise and fall, hear the low rumble of his laugh as a comedy show played. If he noticed how stiff she was beneath the performance, he didn't say. At one point, he glanced at her and murmured, "I'm glad we're good again." Sarah tilted her head up, smiled softly, and whispered, "Me too." But her mind was already elsewhere. She was picturing the photos locked in her desk drawer. The PI's report. The GPS tracker still blinking on her laptop. Evidence piling up like storm clouds, waiting for the right moment to strike. The next day, she met Megan for coffee again. Megan leaned in as Sarah slid the folder across the small cafe table. She opened it, and her gasp drew a sharp glance from the barista behind the counter. "Oh my God," Megan whispered. "Sarah, this is everything." Sarah sipped her latte calmly. "It's enough." "Enough for what?" Megan asked, her eyes wide. Sarah's gaze hardened. "To end this marriage on my terms. To take Noah with me. To make sure John never sees me as weak again." Megan bit her lip. "Are you going to confront him?" "Not yet," Sarah said, her voice low, steady. "Confronting him now would give him time to hide, to twist the story, to turn it back on me. I'll wait. I'll let him feel safe." And when he least expects it, she let the thought hang, unfinished but sharp enough to make Megan shiver. That evening, Sarah arrived home before John. She tucked Noah into bed, kissed his forehead, and then returned to her office. With the door locked, she opened her laptop and began compiling. Every piece of evidence. Every timestamp. Every discrepancy between John's lies and the truth. The folder grew. The plan sharpened. By the time John's car pulled into the driveway, Sarah closed the laptop, smoothed her hair, and walked into the kitchen with another smile. John stepped inside, tired but relaxed, humming under his breath. He didn't know that just 20 feet away, in Sarah's office, his entire world sat in a folder labeled evidence. He didn't know his wife was waiting patiently, quietly, for the perfect moment to bring it all crashing down. The days after the barbecue blurred together, but the tension in the air was impossible to ignore. John walked around the house like a man haunted, his phone always in his hand, his smile too quick, his eyes darting away whenever mine tried to meet his. I pretended not to notice. Pretended I didn't see the way his shoulders stiffened when a message buzzed on his screen. Pretended I didn't hear the muffled conversations he took in the garage late at night. Pretended, most of all, that I wasn't replaying the video on my daughter's tablet in the back of my mind, the damning footage of John and Claire laughing, whispering, touching like reckless teenagers while mocking me in my own home. But pretending doesn't erase reality. It only sharpens the edge of the blade. One evening, as twilight bled through the living room windows, John sat across from me at the dinner table, his fork barely touching his food. Emily chatted happily about school, her small voice filling the silence, but John wasn't listening. His eyes flicked to his phone every few minutes, waiting for something, someone. "Work bothering you again?" I asked lightly, slicing into my chicken. His head snapped up, eyes wide for a fraction of a second before his mask settled. "Just a project deadline," he muttered, stabbing at his plate without appetite. I smiled faintly, though my stomach churned. "You should really learn how to leave work at the office." He grunted something in reply and shoved another bite into his mouth. Later that night, when he thought I was asleep, I watched him slip out of bed, phone glowing in his hand as he padded quietly down the hallway. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I forced my breathing to remain even. He thought he was clever. He thought I was blind. But blindness is a choice. And mine had expired. The next morning, I made pancakes, humming softly while John stumbled into the kitchen, his face pale and drawn. He looked like a man who hadn't slept, and maybe he hadn't. "Morning," I said cheerfully, flipping a pancake onto Emily's plate. "Hungry?" He rubbed his eyes. "Not really." "You should eat," I pressed gently, setting a plate in front of him. "You look tired." He gave me a thin smile, but his gaze never quite reached mine. Instead, it lingered on his phone, lying face down on the counter. I caught the twitch of his hand, the way he wanted to flip it over, to check it. I leaned closer, lowering my voice so Emily couldn't hear. "You know, John, if something's bothering you, I'd rather hear it from you than from someone else." His head jerked toward me, alarm flashing in his eyes. "What's that supposed to mean?" I shrugged, feigning innocence. "Nothing. Just, marriage works better when secrets aren't part of the deal." For a moment, silence hung heavy between us, thick enough to choke on. Then John forced a laugh, a hollow, tinny sound. "You've been watching too many TV dramas." I smiled sweetly. "Maybe." That afternoon, I waited until John left for work before slipping into the study. His laptop sat on the desk, screen dark. Normally, he kept it locked tight, password protected. But I'd learned something over the years: men get sloppy when they feel too comfortable. And John had gotten very, very sloppy. It only took me 3 tries to guess his password. Our wedding date. The irony was delicious. The screen lit up, and I dove in. Emails. Messages. Folders. My pulse quickened as I scrolled through them, each click another step deeper into the abyss. And there it was, an entire thread of messages with Claire, stretching back months. They weren't subtle. Not anymore. Plans, jokes, confessions. Pictures. Pictures that made my hands shake as I stared at them. Claire in my husband's arms. Claire in my husband's bed. And John's words, God, his words, mocking me, mocking my faith in him. "She'll never know. She's too busy playing the perfect wife." Something inside me snapped. I closed the laptop carefully, methodically, my breathing steady even though my veins burned with fire. Perfect wife. If he thought that was all I was, then he had no idea what kind of storm was waiting for him. That evening, when John came home, I was in the kitchen, a glass of wine in hand. He kissed me on the cheek out of habit, like muscle memory, but I didn't lean into it. I let the gesture hang there, lifeless. "How was work?" I asked casually. He shrugged. "Fine. Good." I sipped my wine, studying him over the rim of the glass. "I was thinking, maybe we should take Emily to the cabin this weekend. Just the 3 of us. It's been a while since we had family time, hasn't it?" His eyes widened slightly. "The cabin?" "Yes." I smiled, slow and deliberate. "Somewhere private. Somewhere quiet. No distractions." He hesitated, and in that hesitation, I saw everything I needed to know. The panic. The guilt. The calculation. "Yeah," he said finally, forcing a smile. That sounds good." "Wonderful," I murmured, turning back to my wine. Inside, though, I wasn't smiling. The fracture line had split wide open, and soon, John would see exactly what happens when a man underestimates his wife. The cabin sat on the edge of the lake, nestled between towering pines and quiet stillness. For years, it had been our family retreat: birthdays, fishing trips, summer barbecues. A place that once felt like a sanctuary. But this weekend, it was something else entirely. It was my battlefield. We arrived Friday evening, the sun dipping low and painting the lake in molten gold. Emily bounded out of the car first, her laughter ringing out as she ran toward the dock. John followed slowly, his shoulders stiff, his face unreadable in the fading light. "You remembered the wine, right?" I asked, unloading bags from the trunk. John blinked, then nodded. "Yeah. It's in the cooler." "Good." I forced a smile, but inside, my mind was running 10 steps ahead. Everything had to look normal. Every word, every gesture, perfectly rehearsed. The calm before the storm. That night, we sat around the fireplace, the crackling wood filling the silence between us. Emily had fallen asleep on the couch, her small body curled under a blanket. I watched John pour himself a drink, his hand trembling slightly as he lifted the glass. "You're quiet tonight," I said softly, swirling my wine. He shrugged. "Just tired. Work's been a lot." I sipped slowly. "Strange. You weren't so quiet at the barbecue last weekend." His eyes flicked to mine, startled, then quickly away. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing," I said lightly. "Just an observation." But my smile didn't reach my eyes, and I could see the unease ripple through him like a crack spreading in ice. The next morning, I woke early. The air was crisp, the lake still and glassy. John was already outside, sitting on the dock with his phone in hand. I stood in the doorway, watching him. He thought he was clever, shielding the screen, turning his body slightly away. But the reflection in the lake betrayed him. Even from a distance, I could see Claire's name on the screen. A hollow ache pulsed in my chest, but I didn't move. Not yet. Timing was everything. "Coffee?" I called out eventually, forcing cheer into my voice. He jumped, nearly dropping his phone. Yeah. Thanks." I turned back inside, hiding my smirk. By midday, the tension had grown unbearable. We hiked the trail behind the cabin, Emily skipping ahead, her laughter echoing through the woods. John and I trailed behind, the silence heavy between us. "Remember the first time we came here?" I asked suddenly. John glanced at me, cautious. "Yeah. It was summer. You burned the marshmallows." I laughed softly, though it felt brittle. "You said it was the best marshmallow you'd ever had. Even though it was black as coal." His lips twitched, like he wanted to smile, but didn't. Back then, everything had been simple. We had been simple. But now, every memory felt like a cruel joke. That evening, as the sky bruised into twilight, I made dinner: steak, potatoes, wine. A meal fit for a celebration, though none of us said what we were celebrating. Emily went to bed early, exhausted from the day's adventure. That left just the two of us at the table, the firelight casting shadows across John's face. I set my fork down, folding my hands in front of me. "John, can I ask you something?" He froze mid-bite. "Sure. If I told you I knew something you've been hiding, would you be honest with me?" His eyes darted to mine, then away. "I don't know what you're talking about." I leaned forward, my voice calm but sharp. "Don't lie to me." The silence stretched. His hands clenched around his fork, knuckles white. Finally, he let out a shaky laugh. "You're imagining things, Sarah." I held his gaze, unblinking. "Am I?" For a long moment, neither of us moved. The only sound was the ticking of the old clock on the mantel. Then John pushed his chair back, standing abruptly. "I'm going to bed." "Coward." I let him go, my hands trembling beneath the table. He thought he had escaped, thought he could hide behind silence. But he didn't know what I had waiting. The laptop. The emails. The pictures. The proof. Tomorrow, there would be no escape. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling while John snored softly beside me. My mind replayed every moment, the laughter at the barbecue, the whispers in the footage, the reflection of Claire's name on his phone. He had turned me into a fool. A joke. But tomorrow, the joke would be on him. And for the first time in weeks, I slept with a smile. The morning air was cool and damp, heavy with the smell of pine and lake water. I woke before dawn, the way I always did when my nerves were stretched too tight. John lay beside me, breathing steady, oblivious to the war raging inside my chest. I slipped quietly out of bed, careful not to wake him, and padded into the living room. The laptop sat on the coffee table, where I'd hidden it beneath a stack of magazines. My hands shook as I opened it, pulling up the folder I had named only Truth. Emails. Dozens of them. Each one a dagger. Can't stop thinking about last night. You're incredible. When can we sneak away again? His words. Her replies. Their digital affair laid bare for me to dissect. Pictures too, John and Claire together at a bar, at a hotel, in her car. His arm draped over her shoulders, his smile wide and genuine in a way it hadn't been with me for years. I didn't cry. Not anymore. The grief had calcified into something harder, sharper. This was no longer about heartbreak. This was about survival. John stumbled into the living room an hour later, rubbing his eyes. "You're up early," he muttered. "Couldn't sleep." My tone was flat. I turned the screen toward him. "Maybe you can explain this." The color drained from his face. He froze, halfway to the kitchen, staring at the screen as though it were a weapon, and in a way, it was. "Sarah," his voice cracked, raw with panic. I didn't move. "Say it." He swallowed hard. "It's not what you think." I laughed bitterly. "Don't you dare insult me like that. I've seen the emails. The photos. Every pathetic excuse you made to sneak away." John's jaw clenched. For a moment, I saw the flicker of his old charm, the way he might try to smooth things over. But the evidence was too damning, too concrete. There was nowhere for him to run. "Please," he said, his voice breaking. "I didn't want it to be like this. I didn't want to hurt you. You didn't want to hurt me." My voice rose, sharp and cutting. "John, you didn't just hurt me. You humiliated me. In our home. In front of our friends." Even Emily noticed something was wrong. At the sound of her name, he flinched. "She doesn't know. She knows enough." The room crackled with silence. John shifted his weight, hands opening and closing at his sides. "It was a mistake," he whispered finally. "A stupid mistake. I never meant for it to go this far." "Stop." I held up a hand. "You don't get to call it a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to buy milk. A mistake is missing an anniversary dinner. This," I jabbed a finger at the screen, "this is a choice you made over and over again." John's face twisted, shame battling with defensiveness. "I felt lost, Sarah. You've been distant. Cold. I didn't know how to reach you anymore." I laughed again, hollow and sharp. "So your solution was Claire?" He winced at her name. "You could have talked to me, John. You could have asked for counseling. You could have fought for us. But you didn't. You gave up, and you betrayed everything we built." For a long time, neither of us spoke. The crackle of the fire in the hearth filled the silence, mocking in its calm. Finally, John sank into the armchair, his head in his hands. "What do you want me to say?" he asked, voice muffled. "The truth," I said simply. He lifted his head, eyes red-rimmed. "I love her." The word slammed into me like a physical blow. Even though I'd suspected it, even though the evidence was undeniable, hearing him admit it shattered something inside me. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Then the anger surged, hot and blinding. "Get out," I whispered. "Sarah. Get out." My voice cracked, but it was iron. John stood slowly, his face pale, his body trembling. "Where am I supposed to go?" "Not my problem." He looked at me for a long moment, as if searching for some trace of the woman who once loved him. But that woman was gone. Burned away by his lies. He opened his mouth as though to say something more, but then thought better of it. Wordlessly, he grabbed his jacket and walked toward the door. I didn't follow. I didn't beg. I didn't cry. When the door shut behind him, the cabin was silent again, except for the soft rustle of pine trees outside. I sat back down, staring at the empty chair across from me. For the first time, I understood the weight of finality. This wasn't a fight we could recover from. This was the end. And strangely, I felt lighter. The door clicked shut behind me, and the cold mountain air hit me like a slap. My breath puffed out in uneven bursts as I stumbled down the steps of the cabin. Sarah's voice still echoed in my ears, sharp, final, merciless. "Get out." She hadn't cried. Not once. That chilled me more than if she had screamed or thrown something at my head. Sarah's tears I knew how to handle. Sarah's silence, her steel, was something else entirely. I got into my truck and just sat there, staring at the steering wheel, my hands shaking. I'd told her the truth, or at least part of it. I'd admitted I loved Claire. The second the words left my mouth, I knew I couldn't take them back. But was it even true? Did I love her? Or did I just love the way she made me feel, seen, wanted, alive again? With Claire, I wasn't the tired husband who forgot to fix the sink. I wasn't the man Sarah sighed at across the dinner table. I was desirable. Powerful. Needed. And now? Now I was just a man alone in his truck, his marriage in ashes, and the only woman who ever really knew him looking at him like he was a stranger. I drove aimlessly for hours, the winding mountain roads blurring under my headlights. My phone buzzed over and over. Claire. I ignored her at first. Then finally, somewhere near the edge of town, I answered. "John. Jesus, I've been calling all night. Where are you?" Her voice was tight, impatient. "It's over," I said hoarsely. "What?" "Sarah knows. She has everything, the emails, the photos." I told her, my throat closed around the words. I told her I love you. There was silence on the other end. Then Claire sighed. Not relief. Not joy. Just irritation. "You weren't supposed to say that," she hissed. "You were supposed to be careful." Something inside me cracked. Careful? Claire, my marriage is over because of this. My family is ruined. And all you can say is I wasn't careful. "You think this is easy for me," she snapped. "I've risked everything too. My job, my reputation. I can't just," she broke off, muttering something I couldn't catch. For the first time, I heard it, the edge in her voice, the calculation. Claire wasn't panicking because she cared about me. She was panicking because she cared about herself. The line went dead before I could answer. I pulled into a deserted gas station, killed the engine, and sat in the dark. For the first time since this whole mess began, doubt clawed at me. What if I destroyed everything for a woman who didn't even want me, just what I could give her? My reflection in the rearview mirror was hollow-eyed, gaunt. I barely recognized myself. The man staring back at me was reckless, desperate, pathetic. I thought of Sarah. The way she had looked at me tonight, disgusted, furious, done. She had always been the anchor, the one who steadied me when life spun out of control. And I had cut the rope myself. And Emily. God, Emily. What would she think when she found out that her father had traded 20 years of marriage for late-night hotel rooms and cheap promises? My stomach twisted. The next morning, I woke in the truck, stiff and aching. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Claire, it was my boss. I let it go to voicemail. Then another message came through. My bank. A withdrawal alert. Panic surged. Claire had access to the account we'd set up. She said it was for getaways, but now I wasn't so sure. I opened the app with trembling fingers. The balance was nearly drained. Thousands gone. A cold sweat broke across my skin. She hadn't just been using me for attention. She'd been using me for money. And now she was gone. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. Rage, humiliation, fear, they all crashed over me at once. I'd wrecked my marriage, alienated my wife, destroyed my daughter's trust, and for what? For Claire, who had vanished the second things got difficult, taking my money with her. For the first time, the truth hit me with crushing clarity: I wasn't in control. I wasn't the one playing the game. I was the fool. I drove back toward the cabin, unsure what I'd say, only knowing I couldn't stay silent. Sarah deserved more than lies. Maybe it was too late, maybe she'd never forgive me, but she had to know Claire had played me too. When I pulled up, the cabin looked the same as ever, quiet, smoke curling from the chimney. But inside, everything had changed. I stood at the door, my hand hovering over the handle, my heart hammering in my chest. Would she even let me in? I heard the crunch of gravel before I saw the headlights sweep across the cabin wall. My stomach tightened instantly. There was no mistaking the sound of John's truck. For a moment, I just stood in the kitchen, hands braced against the counter, staring at the flickering glow of the fire. Emily was still asleep upstairs. I had tucked her in hours ago, brushing her hair from her face as if I could shield her from everything happening under this roof. But now, with John outside, I knew peace wouldn't last. The knock came soft at first, then harder. "Sarah," his voice cracked through the wood. "Please. Just open the door." I didn't move. My pulse thudded in my ears. For years, I had answered every knock of his, soothed every mistake, given him every benefit of the doubt. But tonight, I was steel. Finally, I unlatched the door and pulled it open an inch. The sight of him made my chest ache and my skin crawl all at once. His eyes were bloodshot, his clothes wrinkled, his whole body sagging like the truth had finally crushed him. "Sarah," he took a step closer. "Please, just hear me out." I held the door tight against the frame. "Keep your voice down. Emily's sleeping." He nodded quickly, desperate, like a man begging for water in the desert. "I made a mistake. God, I made the worst mistake of my life. Claire, she played me. She's gone. She took money, she lied. I cut him off. And that's supposed to make me feel better? That she conned you? That's your excuse?" His face crumpled. "No, I just want you to know it wasn't real. She wasn't real. But you," he pressed a hand to his chest. "You are. You always were. And I see that now." Something hot and bitter rose in my throat. Now you see it. After lying to me, after humiliating me, after looking me in the eye and telling me you loved her. My voice dropped to a whisper, sharp as a knife. "You don't get to come back here because your little fantasy fell apart." He reached for the doorframe, his hand trembling. "Sarah, please. I'll do anything. Therapy, counseling, I'll." "Stop." My hand shot up. "You want me to believe this is about saving us. But it's not. This is about saving you. You don't miss me, John. You miss the safety net I built around you. The home, the family, the woman who would forgive you no matter what. Tears spilled down his face. I had seen John cry before, when his father died, when Emily was born, but never like this. This was messy, desperate, like he knew the ground had given way beneath him. And still, it didn't move me. I stepped out onto the porch, pulling the door shut behind me so Emily wouldn't wake. The night air was sharp, slicing through my sweater, but it made me feel alive. Clear. You broke something in me, I said quietly. Something I don't think you can ever put back together. You want to talk about Claire? Fine. She played you. But you let her. You handed her the knife and pointed it at both of us. He swallowed hard. I swear to you, I didn't mean to. You did mean to, I snapped. Every late-night message, every secret meeting, every lie you told me at breakfast. You meant every one of those choices. And now you want to stand here and pretend like this is just some mistake you tripped into? He shook his head wildly, words tumbling out. It wasn't love, it wasn't, I don't even know why I. Stop lying. My voice cracked. At least have the decency to own what you did. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The wind rustled the trees, the fire inside popped. He stood there, broken, and I felt a strange mix of sorrow and fury. I'm filing for divorce, I said finally. His eyes widened, panic flashing across his face. No. Please, Sarah, don't do this. Don't throw 20 years away. I almost laughed, but the sound died bitter in my throat. You threw it away the moment you decided I wasn't enough. He reached for me then, but I stepped back. The distance between us had never felt wider. You should go, I whispered. Before Emily wakes up and sees you like this. John's shoulders slumped, his whole body seeming to collapse inward. He opened his mouth like he might argue, then closed it again. For once, he had no words left to twist, no excuses to hide behind. Slowly, he turned and walked back to his truck. I watched him go, my heart hammering, my breath ragged. Part of me wanted to collapse against the door and sob until I couldn't breathe. Another part of me, the stronger part, felt a surge of resolve. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for John to choose me. I was choosing myself. And I wasn't going back. The next morning, the world felt both eerily normal and unbearably fragile. Sunlight poured through the kitchen window, painting the table in gold. I made pancakes, something I hadn't done in weeks, because Emily deserved a shred of stability. She bounded in, her hair tangled, her pajamas mismatched, that bright spark in her eyes still intact. For a moment, it almost felt like nothing had changed. But children are sharper than we think. They read silences, noticed the cracks adults try to plaster over. Mom. Emily frowned as she slid into her chair. Was Dad here last night? I thought I heard the truck. The spatula froze in my hand. My chest tightened. I had promised myself I wouldn't drag her into this storm, but lies had already poisoned enough of our lives. Yes, I admitted softly. He came by. Her brows knitted. Did you fight again? I set the plate down in front of her, pancakes stacked high, butter melting on top. My hands shook. We talked. About her. The way Emily whispered that single word, her, made my stomach twist. She knew. She had always known, in some unspoken way. I sat down across from her. Yes. About her. Emily stared at her plate, not touching it. So it's true. My heart cracked. Sweetheart. Tears welled in her eyes. Why would he do that to us? Doesn't he love us anymore? I reached for her hand, squeezing gently. He loves you. Never doubt that. What he did, it wasn't about you. It was about choices he made. Bad choices. Ones that hurt us. Her voice trembled. Are you and Dad getting divorced? The word hung heavy in the air. I had practiced it in my head, rehearsed ways to soften the blow. But now, staring into her tearful eyes, the truth came out raw. Yes, I whispered. We are. Emily covered her face with her hands and sobbed. It was a sound that cut deeper than anything John had ever done to me. I pulled her into my arms, holding her tight, rocking her like I used to when she was small. I'm so sorry, I murmured into her hair. I tried to hold us together. But sometimes love isn't enough when trust is broken. That afternoon, John called. I let it go to voicemail, but later, I listened. Sarah, please, his voice was hoarse, desperate. Don't tell Emily yet. Let me be the one to explain. Too late. I deleted the message without replying. 2 days later, John showed up again, this time while Emily was outside kicking a soccer ball against the garage. I stepped out onto the porch the moment I saw his truck. He looked worse than before. His face was gaunt, like sleep hadn't touched him in days. He saw Emily and froze, guilt flashing across his features. Daddy. Emily's voice lifted, hopeful, naive. She dropped the ball and ran to him. John crouched down, pulling her into a hug so fierce it looked painful. Hey, Bug. I missed you. Emily clung to him. Are you staying? His eyes flicked to mine over her shoulder, begging. I crossed my arms. You can visit. But you're not staying. Emily pulled back, confusion etched across her face. Why not? John's voice cracked. Because. Daddy made mistakes. Her chin trembled. With that other lady? The silence was deafening. John's face crumpled. He glanced at me, then back at Emily. Yes, he whispered. I hurt your mom. And I hurt you too. I'm so sorry. Emily shoved him back, her little fists pounding his chest. Why would you do that? Why would you ruin everything? John broke then, tears streaming down his face. He tried to reach for her, but Emily bolted inside, slamming the door behind her. I stood on the porch, my arms like stone across my chest. This is the mess you made, I said coldly. And now she has to live with it. John's shoulders sagged. He looked like a man being erased in front of me. Please, Sarah. Don't shut me out of her life. Don't punish her for what I did. I swallowed hard, fighting the war inside me. Part of me wanted to scream, to tell him he didn't deserve her love anymore. But another part, the mother in me, knew Emily needed a father, even a broken one. You'll see her, I said finally. But not here. Not like this. We'll figure something out legally. His face fell, but he nodded. Defeated. As he turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of Emily's face peeking from the window upstairs. Her eyes were red, her cheeks streaked with tears. She watched her father walk away, and I knew she had just learned a lesson no child should ever have to. That sometimes, the people you trust most can be the ones who break you the deepest. The papers came 2 weeks later. A thick manila envelope delivered to the house, official stamps across the front. Divorce filings. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where John and I had once laughed over takeout boxes, planned Emily's birthday parties, shared whispered dreams of the future. Now, the table was nothing but a witness to endings. Emily hovered in the doorway. Is it done? She asked cautiously. I looked at her, at the way her small face seemed older now, shadowed with truths no child should carry. Not yet, I said softly. But it will be soon. She nodded, chewing her lip. Good. There was no joy in her voice, only a weary kind of relief. John tried, in his own broken way. He called daily, left voicemails I rarely answered. When I finally agreed to meet, at a diner off the highway, he looked like a ghost of himself. His shirt was wrinkled, hair unkempt, eyes bloodshot. "Sarah," he rasped, "I can't lose you both. Please. I'll do anything." The smell of coffee and fried bacon clung to the air between us. I set my hands on the table, steady. "You already lost us, John. The moment you chose her over us, it was done." He shook his head violently. "It wasn't like that. I didn't mean for it to." "Stop." My voice cut sharper than I intended. "You meant every secret meeting. Every lie. Every message you hid. Don't insult me with excuses." John's hands trembled as he reached across the table, desperate. "I can change." I pulled my hand back. "I don't want you to. Not for me. Not anymore." His eyes filled with tears, the kind men like him hate to show. For the first time, I didn't feel pity. Only finality. That night, I told Emily everything. Not the sordid details, not the ugliness of John's betrayal, but the truth she deserved. "Dad made choices that hurt our family," I said gently, brushing her hair back as she curled against me on the couch. "But you and me? We're still a team. That won't ever change." Her small hand gripped mine fiercely. "Promise?" I kissed her forehead. "Promise." She leaned into me then, finally letting herself cry the way she hadn't before, deep, wrenching sobs that soaked through my shirt. And I held her until she slept, vowing silently to build her a world where love meant safety, not fear. Weeks turned into months. The house grew quieter, calmer. I painted the living room a soft sage green. Planted roses in the garden out back. Little things, reclaiming the space that had once been haunted by lies. Sophia visited often. Sometimes with wine, sometimes with takeout, always with an open ear. She never pushed, never judged, just sat with me in the silence when words felt too heavy. One evening, after Emily had gone to bed, Sophia looked at me across the table and said, "You know, you're stronger than you realize." I laughed softly, tired but honest. "I don't feel strong. I feel hollow." She reached across, her hand warm over mine. "Hollow isn't forever. It just means there's space now. Space to rebuild." For the first time in months, I let myself believe her. As for John, word trickled in from mutual friends. The other woman left him within weeks. His job performance tanked. He started drinking. I didn't revel in it, but I didn't grieve for him either. Actions had consequences, and his had finally caught up. He called one last time, months after the divorce was finalized. "Sarah," his voice was faint, brittle. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything." I closed my eyes, listening to the silence on the line. "I know," I said simply. And then I hung up. It was the last time we spoke. The real goodbye wasn't in court documents or phone calls. It came one Saturday morning, standing in the backyard as Emily kicked a ball across the lawn. The air smelled of fresh-cut grass, her laughter rang free, and for the first time in so long, I felt light. I realized then that goodbye wasn't just to John. It was to the version of myself who had begged, who had doubted, who had clung to a dying love. That Sarah was gone. The new one stood taller, steadier, holding her daughter's hand and walking into a future unbound by betrayal. Love, I finally understood, isn't about bargaining or blind loyalty. It's about trust, respect, and choice. And when those are gone, the bravest thing you can do is let go. So I did. And as Emily ran back to me, her cheeks flushed with joy, I opened my arms wide. This time, I wasn't holding on to the past. I was holding on to us.